Is there a place and time where logic breaks down and wonderment begins? Could that be somewhere at some time along an infinite line between the reasonable and the highly unlikely? Join us on a journey into the improbable.
Today's story, episode 266, 200 miles per gallon. Read by Kathleen Connolly. Opening and closing theme by Matthew Erdman. Somewhere and sometime, the future direction of the world might depend on the outcome of a game.
The big white 1977 Monte Carlo edged past a long line of cars, looking as helpless as a pod of beached whales at low tide. It appeared as if an improvised campground had formed along the road, which extended out of town and ended at a sandwich board at the entrance to a gas station with a handwritten sign that announced, "No fuel today, maybe tomorrow, first come, first served." Vera was glad she had gassed up at the last big town and bribed the station owner to fill a couple of extra jerry cans with black market juice just to be safe. After that, she cruised down the interstate at 45 miles per hour to conserve gas while the remaining holdouts, who were unwilling to accept the new reality, honked at her and passed, gunning their motors to show just how annoyed they were. Vera smiled at the locals in the lineup, knowing that by the time they got their fuel ration tomorrow, she would be well on her way back to Las Vegas, another lucrative job under her belt. A couple of people standing beside their useless cars watched her cruise by. It was hard to be anonymous in a place like Desert Plains. So Vera was glad she had brought the Monte Carlo instead of her fancy new Japanese import. Sure, the Monte Carlo took 5 times the amount of gas, but it didn't drag along with it the reminder of how the world had changed, leaving places like this literally high and dry. She pulled over at the only traffic light on the main street to check where the Prickly Pear 8-Ball Saloon was. Unfolding the road map she had bought one town over, she confirmed the bar's location and drove to the next corner, parking in front of one of the abandoned storefronts with a yellowed going out of business sign posted in the window. Desert Plains was too new to be connected by rail, so the only way to get to it was by car or bus. And like most road-dependent towns, the place had almost closed up when the OPEC oil embargo started over half a decade ago. Initially, no one had imagined it would become permanent. But as the years rolled by, the reality of a world with limited energy settled in like dust, covering everything from food to appliances in exorbitant price increases. The cost of trucking goods made it almost impossible to do business, so most local stores were forced to close. The people who stubbornly remained depended on government-subsidized food shipments and did what they could to scrape out a living in the new oil-rationed economy. Vera grabbed the custom-made bag with her pool cue off the passenger seat and opened the door. The dry heat of a desert afternoon assaulted her as she got out and crossed to the shadow side of the street. The Prickly Pear was a recently renovated building featuring a pyramidal roof that allowed heat to rise and vent out, creating natural convection. Given the frequent blackouts, the tropical-style venting roofs were a more reliable and cheaper way to cool a building. And over the last few years, Vera had witnessed them sprout up like mushrooms all over the Southwest. No one noticed her walk in. She stood for a few seconds just inside the entrance, while her eyes adjusted to the dim interior. The sharp smack of pool balls colliding, the low murmur of people talking, and the sour alcoholic reek of last night's drinks welcomed her. Pockets of light marked out the tables, each surrounded by ghostly figures who would emerge to take a shot before returning to the gloom to sip on a beer. It was like every pool hall Vera had ever been in, and she was immediately relaxed by its familiarity. She surveyed the room for the man she had come to hustle and spotted him in the back corner with a small group watching him play. Josh Feldmeyer was a wiry guy in his mid-20s with curly dark hair dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. His looks weren't that of an inventor or a pool shark, and he certainly lacked any talent for the game, but he had a nasty gambling habit, which had gotten him into trouble. At least that was what she had read in the file she'd been given by her client. Vera sauntered up to the bar, ordered a virgin margarita, took a sip, and watched her mark make a few shots. She noted the pile of bills on the rail of the table he was playing. Josh was winning, but not by much. His opponent missed his shot, leaving Josh an opportunity to win on the next 3 balls. Vera played every possibility out in her mind. That was the difference between her and the marks she hustled. They might think 2 or 3 balls ahead, but she could visualize an entire game and every possible shot in it. She waited for Josh to win, then got up and approached him. "You're pretty good," she said with a smile. "I've been watching you for a while and I like your style." "Is that right?" Josh replied, obviously enjoying the compliment but trying to make it sound like he was told that every day. "Yeah, I've seen a lot of players and you're up there," she replied, taking the opportunity to introduce herself. "I'm Vera. I'm just passing through and thought I'd drop in for a game to take a break from driving." "That's rare these days," Josh noted as his eyes appraised her critically. "No one's got the gas anymore to just cruise around the country for fun. You rich or something, lady?" "No, just headed to Vegas," Vera explained. "Got a new job up there with an engineering firm." Josh gave her a questioning look. "I'm a mechanical engineer," she lied. "I design passive cooling systems like the roof on this place. With the cost of power these days, I can write my own ticket." "I just bought a place in Vegas for cash," she boasted, hinting that she was a person of means. "I don't like trains or buses, and there's no domestic flights anymore, so you decided to drive," Josh completed her sentence. "From here to Vegas would take, let me think. It would take 80 gallons or so. That's more than 2 months' ration around here." "I saved up my gas allowance for this trip," Vera dismissed, as if that should have been obvious. "I haven't driven much for the last 6 months, took the bus everywhere." "Did you save your money too?" Josh said, barely holding back his excitement at an opportunity to hustle a stranger. "So maybe you could afford to donate something to the local economy, something like that fancy case." He pointed to Vera's custom-made cue bag. "Bet you can't play as good as that looks." Vera smiled demurely and slid into the role of someone with more money than sense, the type of person who insists on the best of everything despite not knowing how to use it. She wanted to be underestimated and could tell from the way Josh was acting that he had fallen for the ruse. "Hey, how about this? I'll play you," he offered generously with a sly smile. "I win, I get your case. You win, you get the money I just won off these losers." He gestured at the pile of bills on the rail and the group of locals standing behind him, smirking at Josh's impending hustle of the naive city woman. "Sure," Vera said without hesitation, knowing the pile of ones didn't come anywhere close to the cost of her cue case. "You break." She watched Josh rack the balls, noting how he was playing to his audience, overly sure of the outcome. The man made a point of taking his time, chalking his cue to show off his $1,200 Rolex. "Hope you got the money to buy another fancy case, lady," he laughed and lined up his shot. "My name is Vera," Vera reminded him politely. With the needlessly exuberant stroke of an amateur, Josh struck the cue ball, sending it hurtling too fast across the felt. With a resounding crack, it scattered the racked balls, sending them ricocheting off the rails. The cue ball almost bounced off the table and a stripe managed to drop into the side pocket, making Josh grin smugly. It was pure luck if you hit the balls hard enough on the break. Now and then one would accidentally roll into a pocket. Vera knew there was no skill involved. "Want to double that bet?" he beamed. "Maybe," Vera hedged, unpacking then assembling her cue. "How about this? You tell me what you do for a living and I'll consider it." "Okay," Josh agreed. "I used to be a mechanic in the army, but I've always liked coming up with new ways to do things." He explained proudly, then turned away to focus on his next shot, an easy line to a ball sitting in front of a corner pocket, and almost missed. Vera had to suppress a laugh. By accident, the rebound left him positioned for another straightforward shot. "Damn!" he swore as his next ball failed to drop into the corner pocket. "It's only polite to give you a turn before I win," he scrambled to explain, red-faced. Vera walked over to the pool table, its green velvet glowing in the low-strung lights like an inviting tropical island poking out of the gloom waiting for her arrival. She breathed in the familiar stale musk of old beer, cigarette smoke and sweat, reveling in the moment. This was where she wanted to be. This was when she truly came alive. Sure, the money was good, but for Vera, it was the thrill of the hustle. Winning? She could win all day. There was no challenge in it. The pros she had hustled over the years grudgingly admitted that she could have played in a professional league and beaten everyone. However, what she enjoyed was the surprised look on a Mark's face when they realized they had been taken. Not just taken, but taken by a woman who didn't look like she had ever been in a pool hall before. What they didn't know is that Vera had grown up in one. Her family had owned a billiards room, and she had been playing since she was old enough to hold a cue. She held hers with a well-practiced awkwardness intended to boost her opponent's confidence and examined the table. Vera picked a shot that would leave Josh well-positioned and make it look like a fluke. Then she gave the cue ball a poke and watched the result unfold exactly as she knew it would. The target ball rattled off the rails around the pocket, then finally dropped in. "Ha!" she exclaimed, clapping her hands excitedly as if she was surprised to have sunk a ball. "Instead of doubling the bet, how about this?" she suggested enthusiastically. "The winner gets the money you've won, my case, and $500. Josh grinned. "Agreed, I could use the extra pocket change." He laughed, then took the shot Vera had set him up for, nailed it, and stopped for a swig of beer. "You never finished telling me about what you do," Vera reminded him. "You already know I'm heading north for a new job. What's your story?" Josh put his beer down on a nearby table and made a show of checking his Rolex. "Guess I've got time. Some days I got a lot of business to deal with." "You appear to be doing pretty well," Vera encouraged, nodding at the watch. "Got one of these for each day of the week," he boasted, then picked up his beer bottle, drained it and waved at a passing waitress for another and suddenly asked, "What kind of car you drive?" "A new 77 Monte Carlo," Vera replied, already guessing where the question was leading. The one thing she knew about Josh Feldmeyer from the brief was that other than being a compulsive gambler, he liked to brag. "That'd weigh in around 4,000 pounds and get what, around 8 miles per gallon?" He said more to his audience of groupies than to Vera. "As I said, it'll take 80 gallons to get from here to Vegas. What would you give me if I could put a device in your car that would reduce that to 4? That's right, 4 gallons. It works out to 200 miles per, maybe more. What do you think that'd be worth?" Vera shrugged. "That's a pretty outlandish claim, Josh. If such a thing exists, it would solve the energy crisis, so I guess that it would be worth a lot." "Yeah, more than you can imagine. It's why I can afford as many Rolexes as I want," he boasted. "And that's just part of the cash advance from one potential investor for a future piece of the action. When my carburetor replacement goes into production, it'll make me the wealthiest man in the world. I'm sitting on a gold mine here, lady," he glibly proclaimed, then picked up his cue. "Bank into the side pocket," he announced confidently. Head inflated by his own greatness, the young inventor carelessly sliced the cue ball, putting too much spin on it. Vera cringed, knowing the shot was off even before it hit the intended target. It was going to take all her skill to keep the man in the game and make it look like he had a chance. She would need to play him just right, slowly ramping up the stakes and propping up his ego until he was in too deep to turn back. Vera lined up her next shot and intentionally missed the 9 in the corner pocket, adding enough reverse English on the cue ball to make it bounce off 2 rails before stopping in the perfect position for Josh's next 2 shots. "Oops!" she exclaimed. "That didn't go the way I wanted." Josh smiled greedily. "I'll throw in my watch as well if you're willing to risk that fancy custom cue of yours." "Sure," Vera agreed, happy to help the arrogant young man dig himself in a bit deeper. "That device of yours will be huge. It'll tank oil prices," she added casually. "And clean the air too," Josh crowed, trying to impress her. "The local college did a test, and the exhaust from a car using my invention has 90% less pollutants than one without it. Can you imagine the headlines? Inventor Josh Feldmeyer makes LA smog-free." He laughed, then barely made the shot she had left him. Vera watched Josh like a cat, waiting for the perfect moment to pounce. Her client claimed that the Mark had defaulted on his gambling debts and dropped hints they wanted to make an example of him, taking everything of value to leave him broken. It was the type of client she didn't ask many questions of. She suspected they weren't who they claimed to be and decided it was best not to know. Additionally, their contact, a man who you obviously didn't want to cross, had made it perfectly clear she was being paid extremely well to keep her nose out of their business. Yet she couldn't help thinking it was strange that they had downplayed Josh's invention, only referring to it as a type of carburetor filter. Vera had also been told, in no uncertain terms, that getting the patent for it was her top priority. But now that she knew the true nature of the device, she had questions. Vera knew that a gambling addiction required two things. First, that the reward wasn't predictable, and second, that the gambler believed they could beat the odds. So she sunk a ball and intentionally missed the next one, setting Josh up for a run that even an amateur like him would have a hard time messing up. "It's difficult to believe you can make a car go that far on a gallon of gas," she said, now genuinely interested in the device. "Yeah, most people don't believe me, but I've got the college's test results to prove it. They used my modded '68 Ford Meteor, checked it over and made sure there wasn't a hidden tank, added exactly 1 gallon, then drove it for 211 miles before it ran dry. I've got all the reports. They're all witnessed and notarized, all very legal-like." After the testers were really excited and helped me apply for the patent. He surveyed the table looking at the various combinations, and Vera suspected he was going to take the wrong shot. "7 in the side," she encouraged. "It looks easy." "Easy ain't always the best," he said mockingly, but took the shot anyway, sinking it. Josh smiled predatorily when he realized his remaining balls were set up so he could clean the table. "Want to sweeten the pot?" he suggested eagerly. The man had taken the bait now. All Vera needed to do was ensure he was well hooked before reeling the mark in. "Sure. What do you have in mind?" she asked, pretending she didn't see the run he was about to make. Vera noted that the other tables in the pool hall had all been abandoned as their players drifted over to enjoy watching the local guy take the naive stranger for everything she had. Josh put down his cue and picked up the new bottle of beer the waitress had brought over. He took a swig and eyed Vera like she should consider herself lucky to even be in the same room with him. "The concept behind my invention is simple, but making it work, that's my secret sauce," he bragged. "I accidentally punched a hole in my lawnmower's gas tank. I fixed it by running a hose from the hole to the carburetor, and wow, that old machine ran for hours just on the fumes. That's where the idea came from, but that's all I'll say about it. The rest is what the lawyers call proprietary. I'll tell you what, I'm feeling generous today, so I'm going to wager 0.5% of my future royalties against your Monte Carlo," he proposed, checking his audience's response to make sure they were suitably impressed. "Done," Vera agreed, ecstatic that Josh had opened the door leading to his patent. "Did everyone hear that?" he asked his audience. Heads nodded in agreement. Then Josh quickly cleared the table, laughing as he sunk the 8-ball. "I thought I had a chance. Really, I didn't see that run coming," Vera groaned. "Now how am I going to get to Vegas? I'm stuck here. I'll lose my job." She willed herself to cry, and tears began to roll down her cheeks. Josh watched, reveling in his victory and her distress. "Oh, give her another chance, Josh," someone in the crowd encouraged, confirming to Vera she had the whole room on the hook now. Like a pack of wolves tasting blood, they were going for the kill. They wanted Josh to clean her out. Please let me try and win my car back," Vera whimpered, playing her role as the despondent sucker willing to do anything to get another chance to turn the tables. Pretending not to be interested, Josh took another swig of his beer and chatted to his buddies, obviously waiting for her to name the stakes. This was the moment Vera had been waiting for. "All or nothing," she cried, trying to sound desperate. "I'll bet everything I have." Josh turned around to face her with a feral grin. Even in the dim light beyond the table, she could see that his eyes sparkled irrationally. She had him. He would agree to anything. "I've got the new house in Vegas and about 25 grand in the bank," Vera explained. "All that against your patents, plus I get my car back." Josh laughed as if he had just won the lottery. "Sure, lady, I'll take that bet, and just to show you how fair I am, I'll give you the money for a bus out of town when you lose." His friends nodded in agreement and snickered. "Hey, that's really big of you, Josh," one of them said, laughing. "Go for it," another person at the back encouraged. The only thing left for her to do now was reel him in. "Rack 'em up," she said, drying her tears. Vera broke, intentionally leaving the table open. So this invention of yours, she began, watching the balls on the table settle into their new positions. It's got to have the big oil companies worried. So, have they sent anyone around to, to pressure you, I guess? I'm just asking so I'll know what to expect once I own your patent. Haha, like that's ever going to happen, Josh smirked. Anyway, I'm not worried about them. There's already been way too much in the news about me. It'd look suspicious if my invention suddenly disappeared, wouldn't it? But that's nothing you're going to have to worry about. You haven't got a ghost of a chance of winning. After I beat you, I'm thinking maybe I should move to my new house in Vegas to get closer to the action, if you know what I mean. It's time for Josh Feldmeyer to play in the big leagues. He winked and took his first shot, sinking a solid in a side pocket. Not yet wanting Josh to realize he had been hustled, Vera kept the game even until the end. Then, making it look like a series of flukes, she cleared all her balls, leaving the 8. It was the first time Josh looked worried, and his buddies went silent. The cocky inventor had 3 balls left. In what even Vera thought was a well-played shot, he sunk one, then watched with glee as the cue ball rolled behind his remaining 2, snookering her. "House rules," he called, relieved. "Scratching on the 8 ball is an automatic loss." Heads around him nodded in agreement. Vera played her last shot in her mind. It was a kick off 3 rails, finally putting the 8 ball into the corner pocket. She smiled at how easy a shot it was for her, almost too easy. She looked at Josh, who still hadn't realized what was going on. The arrogant man was confident in the fact there was no direct line to the 8 ball. He thought he had her beat. "You're going to scratch," he taunted, then turned to his pals, boasting, "I'm about to be the proud owner of a new bungalow in Vegas. You're all invited to come and visit." Vera slowly walked around the table, checking the angles. She really didn't need to, but it gave her time to savor the moment before the trap was sprung. When she arrived back at the corner where the cue ball lay, Vera stopped and looked around the room, her gaze finally resting on Josh. "Nice, Snooker," she conceded, "but I think I can do a triple bank and put the 8 in the corner." "Sure, like you can make a shot like that?" Josh laughed nervously as he began to catch on. After all, how would she even know something like that was possible? Vera gave him a knowing smile and lined up her cue. She hesitated, imagining what the world would be like if Josh's invention made it to market. Smog would be a thing of the past. Fuel prices would plummet and the cost of everything would drop. Life would be easier and the future would head off in a different, and to her way of thinking, a more positive direction. In her heart of hearts, Vera knew who she was really working for. Josh's invention would be buried and the new patent holders would never let another be designed. On the other hand, with the bonus she would get, she would never have to work again. But what kind of future did she really want? Suddenly, she wasn't sure. Vera made a final adjustment, then closed her eyes and with a confident professional stroke, sent the cue ball careening across the green felt on its way to determine the future of the world.
We'd like to thank Silkenpaw for becoming a Makeshift Stories supporter on Patreon. You can help us continue creating original content twice a month by either heading over to ko-fi.com/makeshiftstories and making a one-time donation or becoming an ongoing supporter at patreon.com/makeshiftstories. Makeshift Stories is released around the beginning and middle of the month. This month's story was written by Alan V. Hare and read by Kathleen Connolly. Opening and closing themes were composed and recorded by Matthew Erdman. Audio production and editing by Makeshift Studios. If you'd like to connect with us, please send an email to makeshiftstories@gmail.com or visit our website at makeshiftstories.com. Links to both are in the show notes. Makeshift Stories is released under a Creative Commons non-commercial attribution, no derivative license, which means you are free to share our stories. Just remember to credit us and don't alter anything.